Warriors, hello and welcome to the Love Your Life show. I am so excited you're here today because we have a guest on the show who is going to help us with friendships. Whether you have had some really fulfilling and amazing friendships through your life, or whether you have had sort of a mixed bag, or maybe some more negative, maybe some bullying in your past, or some female betrayal, raising my hand. What you are going to learn today and what she has to share will help you no matter where you are. She will help you sort of see how those past relationships might be impacting your present, whether it was a mean girl in middle school or some people pleasing or over the course of our lives. And also to help us really teach us some friendship skills. We were not taught these things in school. She wrote a book called Friendship Skills for Neurodivergent Adults, a guide for the anxious, uniquely wired, and easily distracted. Aren't all of us easily distracted? I found so many helpful tips and tools in her book, and I have been doing this for decades, so I know this is going to be helpful for you too. Let me bring Caroline on the show and let's go. Oh, and I just have to say, fun fact is I'm recording this afterwards, and she is living in the town, like 2 towns over from where I grew up. So I just had such fun talking to her too. So anyhow, you will hear that in this episode. Big love to you. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Love Your Life show, Caroline. I'm so glad you could join us.
I'm so glad I could too. And I'm glad that I got to, be on the show with an American in Australia. Love it.
It's so fun, listeners, because today we're talking about friendship and adult friendship. And we just spent, I guess, like 10, 15 minutes talking about all of our connections. She lives in the place near where I grew up. And so we launched right into it. So I think it'll be very good for us to have this conversation about friendships and how we deal with them as adults. You wrote a book, which I am holding if anyone's watching the YouTube video, called Friendship Skills for Neurodivergent Adults, a guide for the anxious, uniquely wired, and easily distracted. And again, if listeners are looking, I have so many highlights and sticky notes and all sorts. This is a really great resource for people that I will have the links for them to purchase and get a copy for themselves. And I'm just excited to dive into all of it because a lot of us, right now they're saying there's a loneliness epidemic. I hear of a lot of people saying they don't feel connected, possibly to the friends they have or to the relationships they have. And a lot of what you speak of in here is it's like skill building and stuff that we weren't taught in school and can be
Absolutely
really helpful. So I guess can we start there? What do you think, or what was your intent with the book, and what do you think is like the big benefit of this book for people?
Well, I read every friendship book that comes out. I own them all. These are like not even all the bookshelves in my house. I have a book buying problem. And I really felt like there wasn't a book that spoke to people who have a hard time making friends, not just you got busy and it fell off your radar and you need to reboot, right? I felt like for people who might be ADHD, think that they're ADHD, aren't sure, are a little quirky, are a little, distracted, that there was nothing, and that the advice in the books that are kind of like, hey, reset and go back to your baseline really didn't apply because most of the people that I work with have struggled with friendship their whole lives. And I also like books to be very like sticky, full of strategies. I like books to have really, actionable advice. Like it's just a personality thing. Like when books are vague, it kind of just really annoys me. I'm like, no, like tell me, seriously, tell me, right?
Tell me what to do.
Tell me what to do. And so I wanted to sort of address friendship in a different way than had ever been done, right? Because I just felt like we were missing a piece. And then I also wanted to give people not you have to do it my way prescriptive, but more like you get to choose your friendships, right? Some of us are over 50, over 40, like we lived a certain way. Now we get to choose our friendships. And I wanted to give people real strategies And some may not apply to you. And I always say, take what you want and leave the rest, right? I'm not saying you have to follow everything. I'm giving you options in case you can't see yourself in certain chapters and you're like, oh, well, that doesn't relate to me, but this does. So that was really my intention. Was I just felt like we were missing something. Writing a book is like a lot of work. So people will ask me to write certain books and I'm like, no, that exists. I'm not going to repeat the wheel just to write a book and go on a publicity tour. I'm doing this when I feel like there's a hole.
Yeah, well, and you got into it, and I really do love that in here. Like you give, like I just opened to a random page that was like your get to know you questions. Any plans this weekend? How do you know the host? Like just you actually give words for people to say, like ask to boost the signal. And I know my listeners like that. I do a lot of work with boundaries and how to parent teens, and like the actual words to say are so helpful. They're going to get that in your book. One thing you just said about people having friendship struggles their whole life, I really resonate with that. I wouldn't say that I thought that I had friendship troubles my whole life. Like I had friends, when I look back to middle school and high school and elementary school, and we were talking about Cape Cod and, walking around, like going to the candy store or whatever. I had people that I would go with. But I would say that once I hit my 20s and onward, that I definitely had more friendship struggles, in that it was like that maintaining of the friends, the creating new friends, second guessing whether, I was doing the right or the wrong thing. And that is something that your book addresses again. And is really helpful to just give some skills around that. It helped me feel like, oh, right, I'm not so alone, and some self-awareness there again of like, oh, this is interesting. This stuff can come up.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is like there's an infrastructure in elementary, middle, and high school. Even if, lots of people don't find their people and struggle still. So I want to make sure people don't think I'm saying, oh, it's easy, because it's not. But there is that infrastructure. And then sometimes there's family friends or people you're neighbors with, especially the way you and I grew up, where our parents opened the door and said get out, right, and come back when it's dark. But I think when it comes to the 20s, then a lot of times people hit a stumbling block because there aren't those funnels that help us sort of all come together. Sometimes graduate school, but even that can be a wide array, a wide swath of people. And it can be people who are just coming, I live outside of Boston. People come to Boston, they get their graduate degree and they leave, right? They might be friends virtually, but they're not maybe staying here. So I think that really makes sense for a lot of people. I also think that there are a lot of people who were not necessarily satisfied with friendships and are kind of lonely in a crowd. And so I really wanted to speak to those folks too, because I feel like you deserve more. You deserve to zing with people. You deserve to be happy. And, I think that is part of this loneliness epidemic. I think sometimes people are completely alone, but I think sometimes they're also lonely in a crowd.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and yes, feeling lonely in a crowd and feeling like there's something wrong with them. Like they're the only one that's feeling lonely in the crowd. Or they're, or that they were friends with these people for grad school, but then now they're not, and what's wrong with them? Like sort of that inner turning of like, it's my fault. And feeling alone is something that's really interesting, and something that your book helped with a lot, for sure, and addresses this idea that we have different friends, different seasons for friends, different times for friends, and also sort of taking out that self-judgment. Can you talk a little about how anxiety or self-judgment can come up and undermine the connection and friendship possibility?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's definitely the possibility that anxiety holds us back more than actually skills, right? So I think there's, different people and there's different ways that we show up. I think there's definitely people who struggle and need some skill building, and they struggle with skill gaps. I also think that there's a lot of people who are so anxious. Many times my clients will tell me about a social snafu. When they tell me the story, I'm like, this is not really a big deal.
Mm.
But they have made it in their mind this huge, huge event. And as a champion ruminator, I can so relate to
Mhm.
this. I am not judging. But I think that anxiety colors the way we view our relationships, and it also colors how we view our skills, right?
Mm.
And so I think anxiety, I have two whole chapters on anxiety, including discussing rejection and rejection sensitivity, and really saying, like, listen, I'm a super anxious person. I also have had a lot of rejection. My having been bullied is like a matter of public record,
Mhm.
and so I've written about it a lot. So I get it. And that anxiety is something that we can learn to manage, and we can manage it in friendship. But starting with sort of acknowledging that we have to look at that lens and the story we're telling ourselves and our self talk, because
Mm.
sometimes our self talk can be so brutal. You know, I would say to people, like, would you say that to your friend? And they're like, no. And I said, well, why are you saying this to yourself? And so I think anxiety is a huge factor. And again, in the world out there, I feel like it's very under discussed. I mean, I've read books on friendship where they do not address anxiety even
Mhm.
for one page. And I'm like,
Right. How
who are
can you
you
not?
writing for? All of my
Right.
clients are anxious, you
Yes.
know?
That's what I was going to say, that I feel like there are some big misbeliefs or misconceptions with friendship that sort of support the anxiety or make the anxiety worse. And that, like, one of them
Yeah.
that I hear all the time is like, everyone has the friends they need. And yet
Yep.
I'm talking to everyone who's saying they want deeper friends. So I'm like, those two things don't go together. Like, you can't sit here and think everyone else already has the friends that they need, and then everyone I'm talking to is like, I feel disconnected and want more friends. So that would be definitely one of them. And then just also sort of this wounding that comes from maybe as our being bullied, or some past wounding in our past. I know that I had, wounding, betrayal with my biological family, like my mom and my sisters. So I had some like female, like, can I trust these women type stuff. And then that comes up in our adult friendship too. And we think, to your point, that like it's easier to make friends often in middle school or high school sometimes, because you have repeated exposure, there's vulnerability, you're getting together because your parents are kicking you out of the house, or you're all on the gymnastics team, that stuff. And so then we get older and we're like, oh, it should be easy. Like, making friends should be easy. It shouldn't feel awkward. Yet that's a fallacy. That's a myth. Like, of course it's going to feel awkward. Like, it's like dating. You're getting, you see someone on the main street and you're like, oh, do you want to get a coffee sometime? Of course you're going to feel like you're going to throw up in your mouth. Like, it's totally nerve-wracking.
Absolutely. And I think that friendship should be easy is a fallacy. And for the neurodivergent community, it's actually so sad, because so many people tell me, like, I'm broken basically because
Mm-hmm.
friendship is easy for everyone else. And so one of the things I talk about in the first like 5 pages of the book is like, it is not easy for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of work. Some people are good at it, but they don't have these skills magically. They learn these skills. I always, with kids, I point to I used to go to my old publisher, my same publisher, but when they were in an old building, and I took pictures of the hundreds of self help books, and I
Mm.
would show them to kids, and I would say, look at this publisher. They're the second biggest publisher in America, and they have books from floor to ceiling of self help.
Mm.
All those people are trying to up their communication game, right? It's not called social skills because they're business books, but it is social skills, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that the fallacy that friendship should be easy, I think the fallacy that you shouldn't struggle, right? I think
Mm.
the idea that one of the things that sends me over the edge, I make videos about it, is when people say, like, be the friend you want to be and like you'll have friends.
Mm.
I have many clients who are lovely, and they are lovely to other people. But it isn't about that. It's about finding your people and having repeated interactions with them, shared experiences, and then nurturing a relationship. So I think all that advice is just sort of damaging to it. It's
Mhm.
kind of like the women can do it all advice from like the 70s and 80s. Like it's
Mhm.
not, I'm here to tell you, it's not possible. You can't do it
Right.
all.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because if we're thinking it's easy, and we've both said this, I just want to really highlight it for the listener to hear this, because if we're thinking it's easy and it should feel different than it is, it leads to us thinking we're the problem and
Yes.
that we're at fault, we're the problem, it's our fault. And then that's a sort of hopeless place. And then we aren't then reaching, we're just sort of like, well, it is what it is. I guess I won't have friends or, whatever. It just sort of leads this like self-fulfilling prophecy of like, you're not the problem, but the way that you're thinking about it is the problem. And so then, it becomes you're holding yourself back from that.
Yes.
Another thing that's interesting, and I see it come up with some of my clients, is this, when we were younger, say that we did have friendships when we were younger, we often had like the BFF, like the one friend that knew everything, met all of our needs. Like if she wanted, if we wanted to walk to Concord Bookstore, she'd go with us. And if we wanted to play field hockey in the backyard, she'd go with, like, she was just that like one friend and we could call her and now when we don't like have that, or we have this new person and we're like putting the pressure on that it needs to be this BFF, that is just way too freaking much for this new relationship. And to see that maybe we have different types of friends for different arenas. Can you talk a little more? You sort of talk about, I don't know if that's the same thing as the social GPS, but just a different understanding that friends, like having a wider knowledge and expansion of our definition of what a friend is.
No, I absolutely love that you brought this up. I think that the one best friend who is sort of like a spouse who fulfills all our needs is sort of a Hollywood thing.
Mm.
I'm not saying that people don't have it, but my experience is that sometimes they have it and then they don't have something else,
Mm.
right? So maybe they don't have a spouse they can lean on. I also think that if you don't have it, you tend to think there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so one of the things I talk about in the book is that there are different friends for different times. There are friendships that will be closer during certain phases of your life. They can be different in other phases of your life. And that we too often, especially neurodivergent people, we assign the moniker of friendship to people who are really an acquaintance or an emerging friend. And
Mm.
that there are different levels of friendship. And then when they cancel coffee, or they don't live up to this expectation of being everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
We feel so disappointed and we feel like we failed or we feel like the relationship failed, when in fact, we're expecting them to be this, almost partner,
Mm-hmm.
for everything. And maybe that's not what they're capable of. And I really try to say to people, think about what you want out of friendship. And I know so many people are like, I want that one close friend. But I often find with my clients that they'll have something else and that they don't want that. And that because they're chasing this one friend, they're very dissatisfied. And, sometimes we have an emotional friend. I have friends who are great with emotional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but they're not maybe the doer friend, the friend
Mm-hmm.
who's like, I'm up for anything. Let's get on a plane and let's go somewhere.
Mm.
I have friends who don't have that emotional register. Like if I was on the Titanic, they would get me the last seat, right? But if I want to talk about my feelings, they are not the go-to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's also something that comes up, and we have different phases of life and different needs. And often I think we're searching for this BFF. And I think part of it for neurodivergent people is we didn't have it as kids in many
Mm.
cases. And so this is what we want. But the problem is when we always think the grass is greener, we don't also look at, okay, well, maybe I'm nurturing this friendship and maybe it will become that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not that yet. And then we lean too heavily on someone emotionally and then we scare them away.
Yeah, yeah, there's that dynamic for sure. Listeners thinking about it, like if you think of dating and it's like you go into a first date and you like verbally like dump all of your trauma on the person, and it's like, oh, that was a bit too much. You can see how that's a bit too much. But what I'm hearing from you is sort of the pressure you could put on some of these emerging friendships can be too much for the friendship. And then also then when they cut out on the coffee, like you've made it bigger than it is, so the wound is bigger to you, than it needs to be, which is interesting. I think what we're also speaking to is just this like maturity and this growing up too of sort of understanding that humans are so nuanced and have so many needs that because I speak a lot of like how the marital relationship, thinking that whether it's a man or a woman, is that person is going, they are here to meet all your needs. Like again, back to the Hollywood or the Disney, like, Cinderella, they end at the wedding. And it's like, right, because they're here and then they march off into the sunlight and everything's fine and you never need anything else again, versus maturing and understanding that people are going to give us different needs. Like my husband's going to meet some of my great needs in this way, but maybe Caroline helps me with my self-help book and we get together and we just like geek out over the greatest, latest self-help book. And then I have Tracy who will go walk with me, for when I want to walk. And then but it's like understanding that BFF maybe that we're searching for is more that feeling of being known and accepted. And we can get that in our different areas if we have that inner confidence.
Absolutely. And I think that we can have close friends, right? So for anyone listening who's like, yeah, but I don't have, that person to lean on. And I do want them, even if they don't lean on them in all arenas. I'm not saying we can't have a person to lean on, but I think the mythology around the best friend is as if we're all running, through the daisies and holding hands together, like the beginning of the Laura Ingalls Wilder, Little House on the Prairie show. And I think that we have to nurture those relationships also. And we have to, and I'm not saying this hasn't been a problem for some people where they are giving and other people are taking.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So I think that there's definitely an opportunity to nurture them. I talk about how to nurture friendships. I talk about how to move from an acquaintance to a friend. I give you like really solid tips. And I talk about how do you stop giving so much if people are taking from you, because that is a problem. And a lot of people will say to me, I don't have reciprocity, and that's what I want. I also think, though, you have to realize what stage of relationship you're in, because you might not have reciprocity yet if they're an acquaintance, right? But I also have a whole chapter on red flags, because sometimes we don't get reciprocity with someone and there's a lot of red flags, just like in dating, and we kind of don't pay attention to them. I feel like my clients spend a lot of time on dating and their Hinge profile and all this stuff. And they don't spend a lot of time thinking about, is this person a worthy friend to me? Like, are they worthy to be my friend? So I want people to think about that, because some people, they don't deserve you. They're not a good friend.
Right. Yeah. They're not your want match. I call it like, it's like you have certain like, or more like there are people who like peaches and there are people who don't like peaches, and you're a peach, and it's like, they're not your person for that. And it's okay. They can go like their banana, but like you're the peach. So look for the people that like the peaches and the people that light you up. I think that's important. And that also is back to that maturity piece of understanding, like, do we want people just so we can say that we have 14 people on our, call list or whatever? Or do we want those people that really we feel that connection and deepness and that we can work on building? And so another part of it then would be the maturity to have patience. That's, we spoke a bit about how I lived my whole 5 decades of my life in the United States and then moved to Australia, me and my husband. And, it's like, and he is Australian, but like I knew no one. And so I have been working on building friends. And it was something that I was very aware of, that I wanted friends. I wanted friendships. And it is something I was, used a lot of the skills in your book, that I was deliberate. I recognize they're in different stages. And one of the main things that's been surprising for me is the patience that's needed. That like I might be, certainly with ADD, I'm like, I want it now. I want it now. I want to be able to like call whoever to coffee and to just be able to like tell them about my empty nest heartbreak. Like I want to do that now. And it's like, okay, but if I call that random woman that I just randomly saw in the self-help section of the library, And then I unload that, like, it's not there yet. Like, it's just some patience. You can get there. And just again, recognizing that we're not crazy and we're not broken. I guess another piece I wanted to speak to that in your book that I really liked and you addressed was this masking and people pleasing,
Yeah,
because that is something that I definitely did when I was younger, and I know my listeners did. And in younger, I mean like in my 20s and 30s, that I was more
sure.
eager for those friends when we were picking up our kids at school, and
Me
I
too.
would get into that people pleasing. So can you, or masking, can you talk a little bit about that and what how you see that show up?
Yeah. So masking is this concept that I suppress my neurodivergent traits. And it can also be like I'm camouflaging my true self, right? You don't have to be neurodivergent. I'm
Hmm.
camouflaging my true self to meet the desires of others, right?
Hmm.
So that I'm more socially acceptable. Um, and so it's not I'm finding my people and I'm looking for, I'm a peach and I'm looking for other peaches. It's that I am with all these people and I want to fit in so desperately. I don't want to find belonging. I want to fit in. And I, try to make myself a banana. And
Hmm.
so a lot of people do it, a lot of women do it. I think somewhat we were conditioned societally not to say, who are my people? Who do I deserve? But more like, bend yourself into a pretzel and go with whoever is willing to take you.
They're willing to take you. Yeah.
Willing to take you. And
Yeah.
I think the worst thing in the world is being tolerated.
Mm.
And I think when you feel that, it makes you feel so icky. It makes you feel
Mm.
so bad. And I don't want that for people. And that's where it comes back to the pacing, right?
Mm.
Unmasking is a whole journey, it's a whole process. And I
I'm
have a
scared.
chapter on it.
Hmm.
But it's a journey, so it's not something I want people to think, oh, I'm going to do this overnight, and if I can't, oh, there's something wrong with me, because for years you've learned to suppress the things that you felt weren't as socially acceptable,
Hmm.
whether that's being neurodivergent and fidgeting and stimming, or whether that's, as a woman, like I'm going to out myself right now, I don't cook.
Hmm.
People can
I don't
come for me, I
either.
hate cooking.
Right.
I'm terrible at it. I tried meal prep, I tried everything. And then one day I discovered like there are meal services that will deliver to your house. Why am I doing this to myself? I will
Hmm.
have an extra client a week to pay for it and I will do these meal services. And they're better food than I would ever be able to make, by the way. And so I feel like that's unmasking, right? That's saying like this is my true self. And I think the people pleasing has been something that so many of us did because really wanted to be liked.
Hmm. Oh, for sure. I mean, that was me. Like as a, I'm dropping off my first grader and the mom is there with her blueberry muffins and she's like, I just spent the afternoon making blueberry muffins. It was so fun. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm pretending, oh, I'll bring them next time. I don't like there's no part of me, and then I'm making the blueberry muffins. I'm like, but it's that pretending and I'm trying to fit in. And you spoke a bit about the conditioning in terms of being a woman and how we're taught like you need to just bend and camouflage and become this thing to fit in or to be accepted. That's a lot of what we're taught just in patriarchy or whatever the system is called, where it's like you are only valuable as a woman if you have a man. And so the lens is then on like what does the man want and what does the man need? And so then I'm going to shapeshift to become that. And I for
Yes.
sure did that when I was younger. It's like, oh yeah, I do like baseball and I don't like, or like I do like, or I'll do this. And that's still to this day, I see that so often with women, neurodivergent or not, that we're just like, what do they need me to be? And I'll do that. Or what makes them comfortable? And I'll pay more, they're considering more of the other people's feelings than their own. And in that codependency lens can get a lot. Whereas friendship could be a place, and I sort of argue like, why not? Could be a place to press that a bit, and because when we're people pleasing, I often call it people deceiving. Like we're lying. We're not showing our true self. And then there's a
Right.
part of us, I know for me, that just felt it was almost like fearful. Like, what if they find out that I don't like making the blueberry muffins and that I don't
I mean,
like
I
the,
take heat for it. I won't lie. I take heat in this town where a lot of women
right,
do enjoy making the blueberry muffins, and
right,
mazel tov to them. That's awesome.
right.
Um, So, I mean, I think that it's very easy to figure out how we fall into this,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think friendship, you deserve to have your people. You
Yeah.
deserve to have someone who lights you up, not dims your light. And around the cooking thing, I have friends who tease me about it and think I'm hysterical, right? I my microwave broke a few years ago, and one of my friends was like, "Oh my God, like that's your only appliance that you need in your entire kitchen."
What are you
And I
gonna
was like,
do?
"I know, I can't function without it."
Right.
I mean, you can
They
have people,
see you and then they still love you. That's the
they
part
still
that,
love me, and
yeah.
they understand too that I am going to always make the choice
Mm-hmm.
to have like career and kids.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 24 hours in a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that's also part of why I have a lot in the book on what fills your connection cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
What fills you up? And then what do you want? Who are your people?
Mm-hmm.
What interests do you have? What makes you light up and feel energized? Who are the people who see you and make you feel that way, so that you can start from there?
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you the opportunity to look at the people pleasing and say, I'm not gonna pretend, I'm not gonna shapeshift, I'm gonna tell people like, so outing myself again, I live near nature. I don't hike. I barely go outside. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's things that go wrong with my house that I don't even notice because I basically don't, I'm not a nature person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, if you wanted to spend every afternoon hiking,
You're not
that's
the
great, but
woman.
I'm not
Right.
your people.
Right.
I'm not your people. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that, instead of spending your time doing things you don't want, you have the opportunity for a reset and to do the things you do want. And there are people out there. Now, are they going to be in my very small town?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not, right? Maybe I'll have to travel. Maybe I'll have to do virtual things.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. It depends. But I think we have this fear, and then the fear, which I get, but it robs us of that connection. And then
Mm-hmm.
everything feels very like lonely in a crowd.
Well, and if we're back in this BFF model, it's like, oh, maybe there isn't that exact match in your small town that all the things line up that you both love hiking and you both love da da da. But if we're more in that wide range of like, oh, she's my hiking friend, or I'm definitely not your hiking friend, and we can have that expansive way of looking at it and way of being really is interesting. And I think, again, this comes back to maturity and that you said something, we need to know what we want in a friend. That's something I wasn't paying any attention to. I wasn't programmed to pay attention to. I was just
Nope.
like, it doesn't matter what you want, fit in, put the mask on, be the good girl, sit quiet, do the thing. And now in midlife and beyond, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I am a person. I'm not just going to be this little people pleasing robot. I don't like, in your case, hiking or cooking, or whatever the thing is, and to have the confidence to show that in a way that isn't overly pressureful of the relationship right away. Your book really speaks to that. That it's like bringing your true self, having the belief that there are people out there that will love your peachiness, and you got to find them. And
You got to
that's,
find them.
yeah, but they're not going to know to love your peachiness if you're always showing up as a banana. Because that would
Exactly.
feel empty and lonely in relationships. And I'm like, why? Oh, because I'm not letting them in. If I let them in, then I'm not feeling so empty and lonely. Like why am I feeling empty and lonely? Because we're talking about hiking and baking because I haven't told them that I don't like hiking and baking. And it's like, well, that makes sense, but that's not, let's see if this relationship has the potential to grow type space. Really.
Yeah. And I think, like, adapting is important, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes someone asks you to do something you're not
Right.
into, and it's their one time thing. I'm not going to not go to
Right.
someone's, raising money for cancer road race, even though I loathe running, right?
Right.
I'm going to go because you're
Hmm.
my friend and you're doing something great. That's adapting.
Yeah.
But I
There's a
think,
difference between like self abandonment and like, what is compromise? We
right,
compromise in
exactly.
relationships. Yeah.
But I think also, people are fearful. Will there be people out there? Well, if you look on the internet, there's a group or a thing for everything,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a different day. When we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was really much harder to find that out. Now, because of Google and because of whatever, we can find out. I have clients who meet people through like, photography
Mm.
of birds in a hiking club, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
there's like 3 layers down, and there's groups, and they can find those groups and they can find those people. And then you have an instant shared language.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I clicked right away because
Mm-hmm.
we both know the area. I grew up in a certain area. I know all the things you know. And
Oh my
if
God, she
we
wears vineyard vines, you guys. Like,
I do. And my kids do. We all do. My husband, it's like his uniform. I don't think he'd
so
know how to wear
funny.
anything else. But like, if I go to a group that is, people who love to photograph and hike and look at certain ornithological things, we instantly have something to talk about. It's
Mm-hmm.
not as awkward. We have a shared language. We have something to build on.
Mm-hmm.
Animals are one of the greatest ways to meet people,
Oh yeah.
volunteering somewhere. You meet people, you kind of filter out people who are selfish because you're talking about people who are volunteering to help animals. All those kind of things help you filter to your people. And now you have an instant connection, and yeah, you still have to grow, you still have to nurture, it still takes time, but it's not as awkward. And I think it helps with the shape shifting because it's
Mm-hmm.
easier to sort of out yourself and be your true self and be your peachiness
Mm-hmm.
if you are like, oh, I'm with other people who really want to kayak every weekend or play pickleball or, go and play, play mahjong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm with those people and they're looking for that connection. They're not looking for me to be a person who does another thing that I don't do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's as we age, it's we just get more and more knowledge of ourselves and then need a little more and more trust of ourselves that like breaking this pattern that we're the problem and more like, no, they're out there. I'm lovable in my peachiness. I just need to find people that like peaches and stepping
Yeah.
into that confidence. Can I say one thing before we end up because you speak about rejection sensitivity, and that is something that is big with ADHD. It's also big for those of us who have been raised to think that we're only valuable if this person likes us, that is sort of that.
Absolutely.
And so, what
Absolutely.
are some tips you have to help people not or with rejection sensitivity, because it shows up big time.
One thing is like check the source, right? So many times people will tell me stories where they have a perceived rejection, because rejection
Mm.
sensitivity isn't that you actually have been rejected, it's that you have
That's so
perceived
important.
rejection.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen to the story, and I'm like, do you even like this person?
Yeah.
And my client is like, no. And I'm like, do you respect them? Right. And they're like, no. And I'm like, so whether they rejected you or not, why do we care about their opinion?
Yeah.
Right. Or like they'll mention someone that I'm like, wait a minute. We talked about this person 3 weeks ago. You loathe them.
Right.
Why, if they, said something rude, is it the injury of the rudeness? Is it that it touched another button and triggered you? Or is it just this, I've been raised to care what other people think
Mhm.
way too much? So that's one
I
thing. I
really
also
like that. Like, we're
challenge
so
the
concerned
story.
what they're thinking about us. What are we thinking about them?
Right. Like there's certain people who like with the cooking who have opinions of me. I'm like, I don't
I
care
don't
what you
care.
think.
Right.
I think
Mhm.
that you should not do X and Y.
Right.
So great, we're even,
Mhm.
right? I didn't think you should have kegs for your kids after the
Right.
prom when the principal begged us not to do things like that. So the fact that
I
you
got
don't
my
like that I
opinions
cook,
too. Right. Yeah.
right? Like,
Well, it's
oh
also the
well,
more secure we feel in our peachiness, the less their input is going to bother. Like
right.
someone saying to me
And
that I should be cooking, I'm like, yeah, it's not how I think about it.
And by the way, though, this is not Caroline circa 1997. This is not
Right.
Caroline, earlier Caroline. Like that
Right.
Caroline would absolutely have cared.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is that we slip into rumination with rejection
Hmm.
sensitivity. Like we go into rumination really quickly, and there's there's a pattern interrupt to interrupt rumination, do something else, exercise something else. But one of the greatest hacks I personally, as a ruminator, have ever been given is from Dr. Ned Hallowell. And, he's a personal friend of mine. I worked for him. And when I was ruminating and I was selling the book, and you're waiting, you get rejections, you get people who don't write you back, whatever.
Lots.
And he said you have to do something that's as strong a distraction, as strong a pull, as strong a dopamine pull as this feeling of rejection, as this feeling of rumination. And he was like, what would be as strong? And I'm like, there's only one thing: to write the book, right? And he's like, then start writing the book. And this for me was game changing. Like, as a ruminator, of all the things in my life that have ever been told to me, because people are like, take a bubble bath. I'm like, well, then I would just be wet
in the bubble bath.
And
why'd I say that thing?
Right. Over and over again. I'm just wet thinking those thoughts. Right. But this really, have this, Jessica McCabe calls it a buddy project, right? So, you're feeling this rumination, you're feeling this pull, someone says something to you, someone has a party without you, someone looks at you a certain way. I'd say challenge the story, but also come up with something that's as equally as powerful. Because part of this is that the rumination is so powerful.
Yeah.
And then the last one I really want to share that I think is so good, because I'm a ruminator, so I understand, is don't ask why questions. This I found in the research that I did. Why questions you can't have an answer. Why did my boss say this? Why did this person
ask
do
them
this?
to yourself, right? Yeah,
right.
Okay.
Don't ask why questions to yourself. Sorry, I should have been clear about that. Like, don't, because you can't know. I can't know why this person doesn't like my peachiness.
Right.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
Why
I can
they do
make
that?
up
Why
stories,
right?
Right? But I don't know. So don't. Those why questions also, our brain pays attention to the bad more than the good, right? And so our brain loves those why questions, because then we can just go around and around in a loop. And I think some of rejection sensitivity is really that we are flooded with this feeling, and then we kind of don't know how to challenge it. So that's why I talk about rumination, because I think that's what happens next. We're like, oh my gosh, that person looked at me funny, or they said this to me, or they didn't invite me. And then we like start spinning into the rumination, and we have to end that cycle.
Right. Yeah. Because if we're just feeling the rejection sensitivity, like for me, if I'm like, oh, that just is a little sensitive because it doesn't feel good to get rejected. Like if I fact check the fears and I'm like, oh yeah, no, you were rejected. And I'm like, okay, it feels a little icky. It passes. And I just like, but it would lead to that rumination for sure. And I love what you say, don't ask the whys. I say, answer the questions your brain asks you. Because I always think of my brain, certainly with ADHD, as like a computer, and all these windows are open on my browser. And so when I have a why, every time I ask a why question, it's like I open a new window and it's just spinning, 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 spinning. So I just have to answer it. Like, why did I say that? Oh, let me think of why I said that. Oh, I said that because of this. Oh, okay. Well, why did they do? And you just freaking come up with something because we don't know, but our brain, that often helps me. But I really appreciate this book. This is an amazing book, an amazing resource. I want everyone to go get a copy. It is super helpful. And this show is called the Love Your Life Show. And if we have a listener out there who was really feeling like disconnected from friendships, or really is like, I want friends and I want, what are maybe one or two takeaways you would whisper in her ear or get her started on her journey?
Well, first of all, it's never too late, right? I have clients who are 60, 70, like it's never too late. I don't believe in that. I believe in trying new things. And I think that a lot of times, especially too, if you had, you were conditioned or you were raised a certain way, now it's a new day, right? So you don't have to live that way anymore. And the other thing I would say is that there are people out there for everyone. I truly believe that. I have never had a client who was willing to try things who did not make friends, right? I have never run into the roadblock of there's just nobody for this person. I think the roadblock that I run into is it's uncomfortable and it's a little awkward, and we have to leave our comfort zone a little bit. And for those people too, you can do this by degrees.
Mm,
Right? You can just buy the book. You can read the book. You can read a chapter. You
hmm
can do one of the exercises that doesn't feel too uncomfortable. You
hmm
don't have to go, from 0 to 60 and
hmm
sort of say, "Oh, I've never done any of this and now I'm going to do everything." You can pace yourself, and you can, put your toe in the water and dip your toe and make this a slow process if the anxiety is so overwhelming to you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Those are wonderful takeaways. I think it feels
Yay.
warm-hearted and loving, and it is. It's never too late. And yeah, there are people out there for all of us. And I've lived that here in a pretty small town here. I've found just a plethora of people, and it's just we have to keep getting out there, and you definitely give the tools in the book. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm so grateful, and I will send listeners your way. And aside from getting the book, and if they just want to hear more from you, where's the best place for them to reach out?
At author Caroline M is my Instagram, YouTube channel. Everything flows from there. If they even forget and they just want to Google like friendship skills for neurodivergent adults, everything comes up right in the magical way of the Google. And it is available in Australia, and the audiobook is available in Australia, whereas my Why Will No Play With Me, my audiobook was never fully available in Australia, which was
Mm,
so annoying to me. So I actually switched UK publishers for this book
awesome.
solely because I was like, people want audiobooks,
Okay.
and this is not something I want. I want people to have what they need.
Yeah. Well, and I'd be remiss not to mention you also wrote another book, Why Will No One Play With Me, where you focused on children struggling
Yep.
to make friends. And so many of my clients are moms who live, all over the world, but a lot in the US. So they could get that Audible too. So I will put those links in the show notes. And I thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for taking your time and coming on and also reminiscing with me about my childhood. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for having me.